Okay, we're going to start with a brief introduction about school collaboration, give you a little bit of background. As we go through today and talk about collaboration, we're talking about a couple of things. We're going to talk about things that you can do with collaboration you might not have thought of before. We're also going to be going through and showing you how to do some things. So it's going to be a little bit of a mix. So we're going to start off a little bit easy, just giving you a little bit of background, and we'll go into some detailed how do you do certain things. So if you have questions, just ask in the middle. If there's three of us here, you can ask us individually, or you can just raise your hand. We will be taking breaks periodically during the day. Roughly mid-morning, we'll take a break. We'll leave at around 11:30 for lunch, approximately. Start back up at 12:30. We have one of our principals from one of the pilot schools coming in to talk today. We usually try to get someone in from one of our pilot schools during every one of these training sessions. And then we'll go through the afternoon with probably a break about midway through. We'll try to stop around 4 o'clock or so. So that's basically the schedule for today. If you're not familiar with the way this floor is laid out, if you look for the restrooms, you can't find them. They are hidden. We don't want people to use them. No, seriously. If you go out back to where the elevators were, go past the elevators and take a left. There'll be the first doors that you see on the other side of the elevators when you go down the other hallway. So if you need to go, you don't have to raise your hand, just go. It's okay. We're not at the school. You don't have to ask permission. Other than that, if there's no other questions before we get started, that's basically the background of what we're going to be doing today. Okay? So the purpose of going through school collaboration, like I said, give you a little bit of a heads up. What is collaboration? It is not just a place to store your files. A lot of people have used collaboration sites only to store files, and that's really not what it's really there for. That's what a file share is there for, to store files. Collaboration is more like the last definition at the bottom. Collaboration is a recursive process where two or more people or organizations work together to realize shared goals by sharing knowledge, learning, and building consensus. And the reason I like that particular definition is it starts off by saying it's a recursive process. It's something that you're going to interact back and forth with people. It's not just somebody going out and saying, you will do it this way or else you're fired or whatever. And you're talking about dealing with multiple people. They can be within the same organization. They could be within your school. It could also be within your school and the neighboring schools. You'll hear the presentation today from the principal. He'll talk a little bit, I hope, I don't know, every time he talks it's a little bit different because he has different focus each time, but he does bring in some of the other schools that feed into his. He's a middle school principal, and he's also invited some of the elementary schools that feed into his school to come into his site and be able to view and in some cases collaborate on the site. So it's not just necessarily within your one school. If you could please sign in the front. And it's about sharing knowledge because you're going to be sharing information about how do you handle situations, what do you do that works in your particular school. You may even have some techniques or ways that you're going to be using SharePoint that others may be interested in using as well. Again, our speaker today will talk about the way he's taken his school essentially paperless. And you might want to consider some of those same options. It's a process. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. Now, he's been doing this for several years now. Hector used to work with him before he became part of our group. And it's something that you have to develop over time, and you start taking one piece at a time and developing that piece. And eventually you'll get to the point where you can take your school paperless as well. So it's all about sharing these concepts, sharing what you learn. And we're not individual schools. We're all part of one school district. So the whole concept is talk about what you're doing with your other people at the other schools. We even want to eventually take the collaboration sites across schools, across the district, but we need to get started. The point is you need to get started somewhere, and the easiest way is within your school. And then as you feel comfortable with that, start expanding it out. We've had some requests already from some principals. Can we have a separate principal collaboration site so that the principals can talk about issues at their schools and find out what other principals are doing and so forth? Of course, that's a very obvious one. But you could do the same thing for maybe all the English teachers or all the teachers of a certain grade level or all the calculus teachers, or whatever it happens to be. You could do the same type of thing where you have a collaboration site that goes across the entire district. So we'll talk about how you can set those things up, and it's all based around permissions. This afternoon, Mike and Donnie will talk a little bit about permissions, and you'll see how you can set those things up. So as an introduction, continuing introduction, take a look around, and almost everything that you do, almost everything that you try to do, every project is going to be a collaboration project. And you'll find that it won't take long before progress is hindered by a lack of awareness, lack of cooperation, duplicated efforts, wasted resources, ineffectiveness, and outright conflict. Of course, those things never happen at the schools, right? But it does, and we know it does. And it's anytime you have a group of people working on a project, there's always going to be some friction. And the purpose of a collaboration site is to help remove some of those frictions, make it a little bit easier for people to communicate. And it doesn't matter what you're talking about, what the activity is, collaboration occurs everywhere. Ever been in a musical group of any type, band, orchestra, local rock group, whatever, it requires cooperation. You're not there as an individual performer. Sports, very good example of collaboration. A sports team that does not collaborate together, maybe they have one or two star players, probably still won't win because it requires the collaboration, the working of all the players together. Even within professions, there's collaboration in everything that occurs, whether you're a firefighter or you're working as a doctor in a hospital. You go to the hospital and you get operated on, you're not going to be operated by one person. There's going to be a whole team in that operating room. Insects, animals, everybody. Collaboration is all over the place. Inventions involve collaboration. No one person invents any one total product. The telephone was not invented solely by Alexander Graham Bell. There were other inventions that had to take place before he could do the telephone. Same thing with cameras, automobiles, light bulbs. Everything is really a series of inventions that come about together to make the final thing that you know today is one of those items that you see on the screen. Computers also involve a lot of people. They're not the invention of any one person. Every little piece that went into creating a computer was basically a different person. There were hundreds of people involved over the course of actually several decades. If you go back to some of the early calculus and calculations of the Greeks, you can even trace some things from back then. So what is collaboration as far as what we're going to be talking about today? We're going to be talking about how to put social collaboration to work. It's not just about talking about where you're going to go eat supper that night, or the football game, or the basketball game, or baseball game, depending on the season that occurred over the weekend. It's about talking with your colleagues and finding out what worked for them, what challenges they currently have, what suggestions you might have for things that they're working on. Sharing your stuff, and stuff is technical. It's a technical term here. We're talking about anything that you do, whether you're a principal or whether you're a teacher, sharing that information with others. Because every time you share information with others, somewhere along the line, they're going to be sharing something back with you, and they may be able to help you. So it doesn't matter whether you're collaborating at the grade level or at the curriculum level. And the reason we focus on those two is because we look at the schools that are out there, and we have a mixture of schools here today. You have elementary schools that are focused probably at the grade level. High schools are probably focused at the curriculum level. And then you have all the middle schools with maybe a mixture of both. Now, the way you want to set up your school is totally up to you. If you have an elementary school and you want to focus at the collaboration level, that's fine. If you have a high school that wants to focus at the grade level, that's fine. We're not restricting the way you do things, but we'll talk in those terms just in order to get through today. Taking SharePoint on the go. The important thing about taking SharePoint on the go with this system is that you'll be able to access it from anywhere, not just from within the school. Nor does it require any type of VPN access or anything like that. As long as you can access the internet, you'll be able to get access to your site. You will have to log in, because we don't want everybody to get into your collaboration sites. So your username, password, the same one you use every day when you're at work, you'll use that one to log in, and you'll have access to all the files. That's good and bad, okay? It's good because if there's an emergency and you need to get something up, you have easy access to it. It's bad from the standpoint of you're on vacation and you feel you have to work 24/7 even while you're on vacation. That's not what our intent was. Our intent was to make it easy to access when you need to, but not to make it your total life. So with that being said, you decide how you want to work with it, but it will be available anywhere you have internet access. Keeping projects on track. A little bit later, assuming that we have a chance to get through everything, we'll show you a little bit about a type of list that you may not be familiar with called a project list. And while it's not the same thing as having project server or even Microsoft project on your desktop, it will allow you to keep track of tasks, the people working on the tasks, the progress of those tasks, and so forth, and display it in some traditional tools like Gantt charts. So we'll see that a little bit later. Keeping your team connected. Doesn't matter if it's just an announcement or if it's the principal's newsletter. How do you get information out to the rest of your staff? By using a collaboration site, and perhaps even making this collaboration site the home page on your computers at your school. So whenever a staff member turns on their computer, what they will see first is your collaboration site. Of course, you can have links that go to other places, and we'll show you how to create links a little bit later. But make it the home page for your schools. That way you can get information out to them, put it on an announcement, keep a calendar, have newsletters, whatever it takes to keep your team connected. Store and sync your documents. We do allow you to store documents. It's not that you can't store documents. We just don't want it to be a data dump. We don't want you to take every file that ever existed and put it up on SharePoint just because, well, we're going to just store everything there. We do have a limited amount of space, and we're going to be having eventually 180 schools in that space. I don't know where we're going to get all the storage space from if everybody thinks that they're going to dump everything. So we may have some issues as we go forward. We'll be finding out as we go forward this fall what people are putting out there. What we're really looking at, though, is your working documents, things that you're currently working on, things that you need to have available for the typical school day, the typical school year. Like, for instance, having any documents about policy you want to have available to all your staff. You want to have those things available. But, you created a document 5 years ago. You haven't really looked at it in 5 years. Is that something you want to put up in the SharePoint site? No, that's really not something you want to put up there. There are file servers available for that. And there's another thing that you might have seen. There are these little flat disks called DVDs. You can burn data onto those. And if you're not looking at the data, that's a perfect place for it. You don't want to keep it on desktops. Desktops tend to fail. And when a desktop fails, if it's not backed up somewhere else, and that somewhere else could be that DVD, you could lose that information. Now, our servers will be backed up. But like I said, it's not a place to dump everything. So the advantage of having things on our servers is it'll be a place to store your active files that you're currently working on. There's also, because we're going to SharePoint 2013, your current SharePoint out at your school sites is probably WSS 3.0. That corresponded to SharePoint 2007. So we're jumping 6 years. You're actually missing a version. We didn't take you to 2010. We take you right to 2013. Part of the reason is there's some interesting collaboration things available. One of those is something called SkyDrive. Now, you may be familiar with SkyDrive if you have a Hotmail account, a Live account, or an Outlook.com account from Microsoft, because they all include SkyDrive accounts. Right now, I think you get about 7 gig. If you had your account long before this, years ago, you might have been grandfathered into a 25 gig account. 25 gig is a fair amount of storage, unless you're doing a lot of video. So we're going to be able to do something similar, but the difference is our SkyDrive accounts are here on our servers, not on some remote server. So we're not going to be looking at some type of violation of one of the management directives where they say that any school-related data has to be on OCPS servers. These will be OCPS servers, so it will be okay. Finding experts that you never knew existed. One of the things that you can do with collaboration sites is each of your staff members can put out a profile on their My Site. And we'll talk a little bit about My Sites a little bit later, but basically a My Site allows people to consolidate things that they go to often. They basically can build out their own pages, but they also build their profile. Profile includes everything from their interests to hobbies to special things that they might want to tell other people about. And the main thing about this is that if you use a lot of the space to store information about your work-related skills, things that you might be able to share with other people within your school or even between schools, then others that might be looking for those particular skills will be able to find you. They may be able to discover that you're an expert in PowerPoint and you need someone to build a PowerPoint presentation and you feel you're really good at it, or you're a graphic artist on the side and no one ever knew that because you're teaching history now. If you put that type of information out there, people can find you, and if they need help doing something, they'll be able to maybe get some help from you. And it works both ways. Obviously, if you're putting skills out, you probably expect that you might need some skills from other people in the future, and you can contact and find other people as well. Discover insights and answers. A little bit of an advanced topic. We won't get into a lot of detail today, but collaboration in 2013 includes a lot of BI, business intelligence. And it's strictly related at this point to a couple of tools, Power Pivot and Power View, which work with Excel. We're not going to have time to go into the details here, but the whole point is that collaboration, it does include some BI capabilities, and where the Power Pivot comes into play and where it can be very useful is looking at your data. You all have data at your schools. You all collect data. And it doesn't matter whether you're collecting data about students, about various courses that you're offering, or even staff members. You have data that you've collected. And I'm going to use an example that you're all familiar with, just to give you an idea what you can do with collaboration. Student behavior. Everybody has issues with student behavior. If anybody says they don't, they're lying. So you can take your information about student behavior, and if you put that into a Power Pivot table, you can start looking at relations, especially if you pull in data from other sources. Like, let's say you pull in data about grades of students, or if you pull in data about attendance, and you start looking at how does student behavior relate to attendance, because you think it might be related. You might think that, well, the students with the worst behavior have the worst attendance, and you want to find out if that's true. You want to be able to prove it's true, not just being your opinion. If you pull in the data into a Power Pivot table, you can basically show relationships, and you can discover if that is a true relationship, if that really is true, and then you can start making plans. What can you do about it? Because maybe by improving attendance, you'll improve behavior. Or maybe you'll look at the way you handle the situations that occur in your school, the different behavior issues. What do you do when a student violates one of the level 1 behavior issues? Do you do anything? Or do you let the teachers just handle it on their own and you don't even want to hear about it at the office? Well, some schools do that, and I'm not sure if any of those are here. If they are, listen to what I have to say, because we did run a study a couple years ago to look at this. I don't think anything was done with it, but we compared schools that did very little with level 1s to schools that did a lot with level 1s, and start looking at behavior corrections even with level 1s. And the schools that did things with level 1s had far fewer level 3s and 4s per 100 students than the schools that did nothing. Is there a correlation there? Probably. And that's because if students think they can get away with something, they're going to try doing other things. But it was the proof of the mathematics that showed that that relationship really existed. So that's where discovery and insights come into play. Find what you're looking for is the search. And the search in 2013 has improved over the search in previous versions of SharePoint. A lot of the search is related to using metadata. And we'll talk about metadata in more detail later. But metadata is something that it's sort of a paradigm shift. And you'll see what we're talking about when we get into more details about metadata. Managing costs. Ultimately, you should not need to have a server at your school for SharePoint. Now, we had hoped when we first started this project, and we actually started this project about 2 years ago because we had to put a business case through and get it approved. And then over this past year, we built out pilot sites, got pilot schools. We had 12 pilot schools, and they've been working with the site since about January. So this has been a work in progress. But the whole intent was we wanted to move everything over to these new servers. Unfortunately, one of the big pieces, the heat ticket system, that you guys are using currently at your schools was not replaced in time. There is a process that they're going through to try to replace the ticket system. Unfortunately, it's hit a couple of bumps in the road. And those bumps are actually pretty big ditches. Because now it looks like they have to go to a business case. And in the business case probably means that they will not be getting anybody in until sometime next year. By the time it gets implemented, we're probably talking sometime in 2014 before it's live. So what we're doing, we're looking actually at a solution ourselves where we're going to take the ticket system and we're going to make it look very similar to what you currently have, but it'll work in 2013, and it will be across the board, across the entire district. Now, when you log in from your school, you'll still only see your heat tickets, but it will allow people at the area level as well as the district level to do consolidated reporting, which is one of the purposes of the new heat ticket system, was to be able to do consolidated reporting. And that way they can see, are there common issues that we're seeing across all the schools, in which case maybe there needs to be some special training for the TCs, or maybe there needs to be some other changes made so that we don't have those issues across all the schools. Right now we don't have that ability. Your ticket system that you have at your school is very isolated. We have no idea what the tickets look like at the district level. So there's no way that we can look at it from the standpoint of, is there a common problem across the entire district? Is there some other solution that we can be looking at? That's part of what we want to change with the new heat ticket system. So we're going to be looking into that. Manage risks. Manage risks from the standpoint of what happens when your servers go down. Do you have a good, solid backup? One of the advantages of going to a centralized system is that we will be doing the backups for you. You don't have to worry about it anymore. We've taken over that responsibility. You don't have to worry about making sure that the server has the most recent updates, Windows updates, SQL Server updates, SharePoint updates. We'll be taking care of that for you. You won't have to worry about whether you want to put a service pack on, or a cumulative update, or just a patch. You know, patches come out almost every week. Do you really want to put all those patches on? Now, we've taken the point of view that we don't put patches on any of our systems unless it's something that solves a known issue. And that's generally good practice within the industry, because patches are not well tested. That's what a lot of people don't realize. They think just because they get a patch, oh, we got to immediately apply that patch. But patches are not really well tested. A lot of them fail. So you don't even want to try a patch, and even if you try a patch, you want to do it on a QA server, a quality assurance server first, a test server. You don't want to put it on production right away. So we'll handle those types of things. We'll look at patches, and unless we know it solves an issue that a lot of people are having, we probably will not apply it. Cumulative updates come about periodically, and I won't say how periodically because it varies. They try to do a cumulative update monthly, but it's not a guarantee. They miss occasionally a month. And what the cumulative updates do is they fix other known issues. They are tested better than patches, not as well as service packs, but they are at least tested a little bit better. I'll give you an example of a cumulative update, that one that's coming out next month. About 6 months ago, we ran into a problem with our pilots. When we first started working with the pilots, some of the staff at these pilot schools were having difficulty working with SharePoint 2013. And at first we couldn't figure out what the cause was. It seemed almost random because some people at the school had no problems. Other people at the school had a lot of problems. The system would just fail in the middle of doing something. And they'd get this really bizarre error message because they didn't understand what was going on. It took us a while to trace what the problem was. It took us a while to find what the pattern was. The pattern was, it was anybody whose last name had an apostrophe in it, like O'Brien, O'Neill, any of those. And it was the apostrophe that actually was causing a problem, because the apostrophe is also used to close strings in computer code. And that apostrophe was closing the string at the wrong place, causing the rest of the command to be garbage, which caused the page to fail. We reported it to Microsoft. It took actually several weeks until Microsoft admitted it was a problem on their part, because they didn't want to admit that they made a mistake. They never do. But they finally admitted they made a mistake. In the meantime, we found another solution. And the other solution was we just gave them another email address. They still had the apostrophe, one with their name having the apostrophe in it, but we gave them another email address that did not have the apostrophe and made that the primary. They could still use their one with the apostrophe for everything else, but by making the one that did not have the apostrophe the primary, whenever they logged into SharePoint, they were okay. But still, we wanted Microsoft to fix it, just out of principle. We finally got notice about a month or so ago, maybe a month and a half ago, that it will be in the August cumulative update. That's how far advanced you have to be in order to get it into a cumulative update. It takes, from the time that they commit to putting it in a cumulative update, it can be several months until that cumulative update comes out. So next month, the cumulative update will have the fix to that. So my point is this: if you encounter problems, you have to let us know. Doesn't mean we'll have the answer always, because it's not something sometimes you can fix. Sometimes it's a problem with SharePoint. Sometimes it's maybe a problem with the Windows operating system, or IE, or the browser, or whatever browser you're using. But until we find what the pattern is, we can't begin to address it. Once we find out what the pattern is and can address it, then we can route it appropriately. And if it's something that Microsoft has to handle, it may take a while, but we'll see what we can do to get it handled. I just wanted to give you that as an example. Manage your time. Since you're not going to have to worry about managing the server, at least if you're the TC, you're not going to have to worry about managing the server. You'll be able to do other things that can support the staff. Things that might be more beneficial to the rest of the staff rather than sitting there and trying to manage the server. Now, eventually, when we get a heat ticket system, either the one we're building or the one that they eventually buy for the district, that server that you currently have should go away. And when I say go away, it's not going to be used for SharePoint. If you want to allocate that server for some other purpose within the school, that's up to you. It will save you from buying another server, though. Basically, what we're doing is we're saying that those servers can either be retired or repurposed at some point. So basically, in summary, collaboration is a lot more, from everything I've talked about, is a lot more than just putting your files up in a place to store them. You notice I said very little about putting files up there. Most it's been about other things. Personal sites, the My Sites, being able to support RSS feeds. RSS feeds within the district. You want to find out what other people are doing. You want to get notification when they submit something. Maybe you want an RSS feed for when the principal puts out a newsletter, or when somebody else puts out a newsletter, or puts out a blog entry. The ability to create communities, and the communities can be anything from the grade level to curriculum to maybe a hybrid, like principals across all the schools. Improvements in search, improvements in document management. A lot of these have to do with the fact that there's now metadata. Document sharing. One of the interesting things in 2010 that they introduced, which you don't have in 2007, and it's been improved in 2013, is the ability to share documents from the standpoint of editing the document from more than one person at the same time. In 2007, you could not do that. Only one person could edit a document at a time. Starting with 2010, you could have multiple people edit the same document at the same time, as long as they were in different paragraphs, or different cells in Excel, or different slides in PowerPoint. That only works with Microsoft products. So if you're using something else other than Microsoft, no, this is not going to help you. But basically what they've done is they've changed the way they store Microsoft documents. And you might have remembered 2007 Office came out with this other new format, DOCX. Well, part of the reason for going to a DOCX is the information is actually stored as XML. And within XML, each paragraph is a separate unit. So basically that's how they do the tracking of what's been changed, and how they can do the tracking of who has something that they're currently working on, so that they need to lock it. So all of that's part of having at least Office 2007 and SharePoint 2010 or higher. Now, eventually, this is 2013 SharePoint. Eventually, you'll have Office 2013. When that happens, it even improves the picture for data storage, because instead of storing the entire document multiple times every time there's a change, it'll store only the part that has changed. So it'll reduce the amount of storage space. But until you guys have Office 2013, you won't have that part. And the business intelligence, I'm not sure where we're going to go with that eventually. That's going to be a whole different topic. But being able to use Power Pivot, Power View to create dashboards, to look at your data and be able to display data. It's probably something that we'll be looking, once we get the schools rolled out, we might be looking for a couple of volunteer schools that want to look at their data and play with creating dashboards with their data at their school. So we'll be talking a little bit more today about how to synchronize collaboration with your desktop, specifically with Outlook, so that you can share calendars. But not only can you share calendars, you can also share tasks from that task list I was talking about for project management. You can also share documents, so that basically you can put a document, store it in Outlook. I know that's a little weird because you're not thinking in terms of storing documents in Outlook, but you'll be able to store a document. It'll look almost like a message, almost like an email, but you can store it in Outlook. You can disconnect from the network, work on the document locally, and the next time you connect to the network, it'll try to synchronize back up again. Now, when you start doing things like that, there's some other concerns, because if you're going to be taking a document offline, you don't want anyone else to be in the document because there's no way to do the locking. So if anybody is really interested in doing that, we'll talk about that separately, maybe at an open lab, something like that. We'll talk about how to do that because you're really going to want to lock the document. Integration with Office web apps. Part of the reason this works off-site on any computer is because Office web apps will allow you to open the documents online through the browser. It's not going to require having Microsoft Office on the local machine. So if you're working from home and you don't have Microsoft Office on your home machine, it's not going to be a problem. Now, you won't have all the features and functionality. Microsoft Office web apps it's functional. It allows you to do some basic changes. It will allow you to read everything that's currently on the document. But as far as making some changes, there are going to be some limitations on what it can do. But at least it's better than nothing. And it will allow you to do a fair amount. And of course, we talked about SkyDrive before as a way to store some of your documents, and they're stored locally, not out in some nebulous cloud somewhere that we don't have control over. So with all that being said, collaboration is going to be what you make of it and how you use it. Collaboration is, as I said at the beginning, not just about storing files. It's about all this other sharing of information that I've talked about for the last half hour. So I wanted to get that mindset change, because we've seen a lot of people when they first create a collaboration site, especially here in this office, this building, when they first start having some collaboration sites, we saw people dump files, and they did it the same way they did their file shares, with folders within folders within folders. And then they got lost, and they didn't know what was there. There's files out there they put up there 5 years ago. They don't even know they're there anymore. And when they needed to access something, they put another copy out there in a different folder. And then they had some people modifying one version, other people modifying a different version. And before you knew it, we had multiple versions that each had updates. Nobody had the final say in the document. Nobody had the final version. And then they come back to us and they say, can you fix this? Can you put all the versions back together again? Not really. You're going to have to look at those somewhat manually and figure out what really you want to keep and what you don't want to keep. We're going to show you how to avoid those problems so that that doesn't happen going forward in the future.